You checking in with Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, and you're tuning in to Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If this is your first time tuning in the show, make sure to hit that like, subscribe button on YouTube. You'll also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, the first night of the 2025 NFL Draft is officially in the books. Chargers fans everywhere were waiting, watching, anticipating. And with the 22nd overall pick, the Chargers have a new bell cow running back in North Carolina, Omarion Hampton. Lots to get into. Definitely going to go through and dissect this pick because Dan and I were cheesing about this pick all night long. Chargers fans, majority of the ones that I have seen at least, have been extremely happy. And then we're going to dive into some targets on day 2 where the Chargers can see their priorities goes. But Dan, this was a pick that was talked about sparingly throughout our show. We obviously had talked about how deep this running back class was. But when you look at how the board fell to the Chargers, this is where everything was really determined. And I apologize, Dan, but before we get into it, obviously I wanted to ask, how are you, sir? You and I, my domicile last night, bunch of people, a lot of electricity as it relates to the annual draft party held. We threw back a number of drinks, that's for sure. Let's just get that right out of the way. But it was a fun night.
It was. I'm great, man. Appreciate your hospitality as well. Your kaffa is incredible. The spread was fantastic. The drinks were flowing. The time was had, and boy, was it a blast. I feel like everyone went through that roller coaster of emotions because you had like 15 NFL teams represented at that draft, it felt like. And that's always fun. It feels like we're at like a mini draft party, but like it felt like we were in Green Bay, but just a smaller version of it because we had so many people represented.
I had a Tampa Bay fan that was a little bit in his feelings. I had a Cincinnati Bengals fan who was okay with the selection of Shamar Stewart.
Unfortunately, you had a Raiders fan
who was elated for the fact that Ashton Genty went 6 overall to them.
Cowboys, Titans, Packers, you had a bunch.
Yes. So it was a really fun environment. Excited to get into the debauchery. And I say that with full honesty because it will be debauchery when we are watching rounds 2 and 3 today. So it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. But Dan, let's get into this. Let's talk about the Chargers' first overall selection in Omarion Hampton. As I was mentioning a few seconds ago, a lot of this was based upon how the board fell to the Chargers. The top 2 tight ends went off the board. Colson Loveland, surprisingly, was the first tight end that was taken by the Chicago Bears. Then the most predictable mocked selection in any mock draft that anybody does, Tyler Warren ended up doing exactly what he was mocked to do, and that is go to the Indianapolis Colts. So your top 2 tight ends were off the board. And then 1, 2, 3 interior defensive linemen were gone until the Pittsburgh Steelers selected Oregon's Derek Harmon right before the Chargers selection. So given that, as we have talked about many, many weeks now, how the Chargers have set themselves up to build this team throughout free agency, they are literally in BPA format every single round. So something
talked about for months.
Yes.
Talked about for months.
So something to keep in mind over the next 2 days of the draft in terms of how their strategy is going to go. And when you look at that, given the fact that you're not going to reach for tight end number 3 at 22, you're not going to reach for interior defensive lineman 5 at that point in the draft.
Certainly not BPA.
There were, from what we heard, the Chargers were obviously fielding calls for players for teams that wanted to trade up. And given the situation and how it played out, they stuck to their guns and they played the BPA board. And Omarion Hampton was definitely one of the best offensive players remaining on the board. I know a lot of Chargers fans have been in their feelings, thinking that it was going to be Matthew Golden, who was selected by the Packers directly after the Chargers had picked Omarion Hampton. But the Chargers are getting such a dynamic weapon in Omarion Hampton. And when you're going to pair that with Najee Harris for this upcoming season, the Chargers running game is going to be vastly improved. I have been on this show, and Dan knows this, that I actually was not elated over the Najee Harris signing, specifically just because of style. I thought J.K. Dobbins had earned his second contract. I wanted to see him back. I like the fact that J.K. Dobbins had more explosive traits than Najee did, even with the productivity and even with the durability. My first inclination was to prefer that option.
Mm-hmm.
You got the explosive plays back in Omarion Hampton. That is for sure.
Yep. And look, I think there are two things can be true. I think there's a lot of people that had a lot of players that they would have liked to have drafted at 22 that were not there at 22, right? Like all of the planned Walter Nolans or, I don't know, for me, James Pierce or something, or if you wanted to go Stewart, or if you wanted to go Derek Harmon or Kenneth Grant, like all those options, Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, like all that stuff that a Chargers fan are talking about, they're gone. And so you can argue with the wall about if you like the Chargers' strategy of going running back, whatever. But it's hard to argue that he was not the best player on the board. Like, you might rather have Matthew Golden or Luther Burden or whoever. They're not higher on that board than Omarion Hampton was for me. Now, I will say, some of yesterday, and it feels this, I'm not going to project this, but it feels like, this is how I felt. There was like two feelings of, oh, Derek Harmon was right there. They could have traded up for it. And then the heart attack watching them field calls live with on the clock.
Literally taking it down to 000.
And then it goes, then you're wait, are they trading here? Are they going to actually take a pick? And you say pick is in. So you're like, oh my God, what are we doing? Why are we trading? So like, I think all of that is what constituted a lot of the feelings. But if you just look at this thing at face value, and I said a little bit on social media yesterday, but this is so on brand. Like, nobody should be surprised. This is exactly what Jim Harbaugh does with football teams. This is exactly what they have prioritized before they even had running backs, i.e. last year. And you talk about the things that they care about, right? Like production, proven production. The guy like Joe Alt last year, like there was no doubt about it. That guy was going to be at least a double. You talk about explosiveness, athleticism, juice, depth, making the team better. There every day, durability, speed. He checks all of it. Medical, clear, like everything. Is it the Justin Herbert throwing for 5,000 yards pipe dream? Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, Ted McMillan? No, but like if you were expecting that, that's on you. This Chargers team has unapologetically told us who they are for 2 years now. Gotta listen to them. And the pick that they made, by the way, this kid is a stud. Like, what are we doing? Like, what? It's ironic to me, right? Like, and I don't know about you, Jake. I don't want to sit on a high horse anymore, but Chargers fans have been desperate for a consistent, quality, proven, forward-thinking, authentic staff for years. And because they do it a different way than the Chargers fans want, they don't like it. Like, I'm sorry. Chargers fans should be pumped. This kid has like over 3 grand yards rushing, averaged almost 6 yards per carry on 2 seasons with a 3 grand, and 30 touchdowns. The guy's like second most yards after contact of any running back. Like, He does exactly what this Chargers team wants to do and is the second best one, arguably, some would say the best one at the position. You got RB2 in a stacked RB class, but there are tiers to the stacks. And he and Genty are on their own tier in terms of proven production and filling the check boxes, if you will.
Yeah, Dan, you saw this at my whiteboard that I had last night with my big board player rankings. I had Omarion Hampton ranked as my 18th best player on the board. And Joe Ortiz, as you've been talking about, listen to him because this is one of the more transparent GMs that the Chargers have ever had. The last regime wouldn't tell us anything. That's why we were all holding our breath when mistakes would happen. That's why we would be overly pissed when those moments would happen. But Joe Ortiz, again, allowed the board to fall to him, went BPA format. He, along with Jim Harbaugh, going back to the beginning of last season, have talked about giving Justin Herbert a running game. It did not end up panning out the way that they wanted to with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. And now you have essentially revitalized it, or excuse me, basically just given it new life with Mekhi Becton, with Najee Harris, and now Omarion Hampton. You're doing these things to help him. And the other aspect of this, Dan, I will say this. When I saw Ashton Jeanty go to the Raiders, which has been my long prediction that was exactly what was going to happen, it still hurt like shit to know that the Chargers have to face that now twice a year. But I'll tell you this. Getting Omarion Hampton took a lot of that sting away because now everybody else has to face Omarion Hampton twice a year. And that put a big smile on my face.
Totally. And you talk about building a bully. You talk about tip of the spear. You talk about getting someone that can help your team be better. And this Chargers team went through this offseason and filled in a ton of holes to where they could actually go BPA, which, by the way, when have we actually seen an organization be able to do that? Like, it's been a minute, right? And under this new philosophy, again, I think context matters, right? If this was a Ben Johnson, if this was a Sean Payton, I think this is a different story. But under Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, like, it is obvious what they want to do. And they don't care if you know. Like, they de-gaff, right? So I think right now this is kind of incredible. And it shapes things up nicely for moving forward. Jake, we have voicemails, reactions. And I kind of want to, maybe we can compile all of that for like just a draft reaction episode.
Fair enough.
And then we can snap the line afterwards because this roller coaster is going to be fun.
I'm excited to hear those.
Yes. But yes, we do have that. But again, just to put a bow on what Chargers fans are getting with Omarion Hampton. Breakaway speed, one of the fastest running backs in the class. Proven production, I mentioned it, over 3,000 yards rushing the past 2 seasons. Talk about PFF grades, 88.4 offensive grade in 2024, 88.7 in 2023. Yards after contact, over 1,000 both seasons, the past 2 seasons, 1,222 last year, 1,072 the year before that. Longs of 75 yards and 68 yards both seasons. 10-plus yard rushes, 80 of them over the past 2 seasons. Okay? We're talking about a guy who gets in the end zone, 30 touchdowns in over 2 seasons, one of which had a baller quarterback. The other one this past year, everyone knew he was getting the ball and toting the rock and still crushed it. 5.9 yards per carry. So, Chargers get a stud. That pairing with Najee Harris, in the short term, love it. Long term, Omari Hampton, it's your show. And in this regime, with this staff and this style, it was in my category of, yep, get it, makes sense, 100%. All right, cool, next. But the fun part, and Chargers fan experienced this roller coaster last year, is then moving into day 2.
Yes.
What does this selection mean? What does the Joe Alt selection mean to day 2? They go get Ladd McConkey. The rest is history. Everyone is flabbergasted and elated. So what would that be for this team this year? So we want to get through some of like our day 2 guys that we like, either that we like, or we can see that this Chargers team would be all in on, given who they are and what they are about. But Jake, just kind of overall, looking at running back position selected day 1, how do you feel that shapes them into form for day 2?
This will be the important exercise for people to remember, as Dan just said, when you want to compile one player to another based on round, because we have to remind ourselves when Joe Alt was taken 5th overall last year, what followed? It was 7 or 8 additional offensive linemen that came off the board in the first round. And then you took Ladd McConkey by trading up into the second. And if the roles have been reversed, and for the high contingent of the fan base that rather would have seen Malik Neighbors at 5, you wouldn't have been able to find an offensive lineman in that second round that would have been the caliber of Joe Alt.
Or the equivalent of Ladd McConkey in that of
correct
tackles. Yeah.
So in retrospect, in hindsight's always 2020, it looked like the Chargers hit a home run in their first and second round pairing. So keep that in mind for when the Chargers are going to pair that first round pick in Omarion Hampton with whoever they end up selecting for day 2 in rounds 2 and 3 today. Because I think with the Chargers having the 55th pick, if they stay there, if there is no movement, I have to preface that because we know what Joe Ortiz did last year in working the phones to try to trade up to the player that he wanted. But if the Chargers remain at 55, I think you're going to see a run on running backs today. No question about it, even for it being one of the deepest running back classes that we have seen. You still have Travion Henderson. You still have Quinshon Judkins. You still have Caleb Johnson. You still have RJ Harvey. You still have Cam Scadaboo that's on the board. I think they're coming off the board today for sure. I think you're going to see more edge players come off the board. You're obviously going to see another run on the interior defensive line, as deep as that is. You're probably going to see a lot more interior offensive linemen come off the board. Ideally for the Chargers, to set them up in a good situation by the time their selection comes, is, hell, if Tyler Shuck, Shedeur Sanders, and Jalen Melrose are all selected before 55, you're looking good. You're looking real good. So there is a plethora, depending on if we still go by this BPA format for Joe Ortiz, which I definitely believe he is still going to operate with. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can make a case to say that as it stands right now, interior defensive line and tight end might be your top priorities. But depending on how the board falls, you could see the Chargers go in a different direction. So Dan, let's take a look at some of these.
Let's do it. So the BPA part is fascinating, right? Because there's still guys from day 1 that I'm shocked did not get selected, right? Like Will Johnson. I know the medical there, I think with the knee, like it clearly is an issue with teams. Nicky Manwari, like the Chargers need safety? I don't think so, but like, damn. Donovan Zaraku, Darius Alexander. You mentioned the running backs. You got the tight ends. I love Mason Taylor. A lot of folks are high on Elijah Arroyo. Like these are all names. Jaden Higgins is there still. Like a bunch of names that I think people could have said, oh yeah, I can totally see them in day 1. But only so many are going to get there. And what makes this draft so fun, specifically this year, is this is the time where it can get real crazy, where we can see names that you are shocked go so high and or names that are getting fallen way further than you thought. It just takes one team to love them. And so this day is all about fit for this Chargers team and for every team. But this is the bulk of this draft class that I think is value, right? This is where you can still get starters, probably deeper than drafts you've seen in the past, longer than in the past. So some of the guys I think that Jake and I kind of went through that we are in. Darius Alexander, you guys heard it in our defensive line rankings. I think he is the next one up for me.
He was both of our number 5 interior defensive linemen when we had him ranked.
I think I still have 5 of my top 10 defensive linemen available. So like I'm good. Him, Omar Norman Lott, TJ Sanders, CJ West, like all those guys. I'm good with them. Jake, what about you? Corners. Think that can happen?
Yes, I still think that corner is a possibility simply because of we know Joe Ortiz's philosophy. And you can never have enough good corners. So do not rule out corner as a possibility. Noel Williams out of Cal is personally one of my favorite cornerbacks in this class. He's just so smart. If depending on where Dorian Strong's value is, that's another one in terms of high football IQ and just playing the ball extremely well. Would fit right into Jesse Minter's zone scheme that he wants to run in coverage. Female Adagio from UCLA, we can't discount edge either, Dan. Female Adagio is one of my favorites in this class, along with Ashton Gelati out of Louisville. Both of the guys, in terms of getting after the quarterback, they can do. Talk about speed, power combination that they can bring to the table. I love what I see from both of them. So whether we're talking round 2, round 3 here between those guys, I love what I've seen from them. Obviously, now this is a little bit different because these are some offensive targets for the Chargers here. Mason Taylor, Jaden Higgins, Elijah Roro, Trey Harris, one of my favorites. The individual that I texted Dan on April 28th of last year, just following the draft, when I said there is one player that I am pounding the table for, give me Trey Harris. He probably does not last to 55, unfortunately.
He might.
If he lasts to 55,
Jake's doing cartwheels.
I would be floored. I would be floored. I mean, you could pretty much put the problems for Justin Herbert to bed, that you improved his entire situation in the first 2 rounds.
They're tired.
I mean, outside of just into that offensive line, which you've already done in free agency, still the work's not done. But in a 2 to 3 month period, you've given Justin Herbert the help that you had said at the end of the season that you failed at. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of receiving options, both tight end and wide receiver alike, that could benefit this team.
Yeah, Mason Taylor, to me, is clear, in my opinion, tight end 3. I think he brings so much versatility. I think he's a all-around tight end that would be so great to complement what the Chargers team needs at tight end. And I think he has a lot of upside to Arroyo. We talked about receivers. There's a bunch, like Luther Burden's still there. Like, I don't think they make it to 55, but like, we're talking clear trade-up scenarios here. If they can go get Higgins, like, man, that's feeding families if they're doing that. Can you imagine Chargers fandom's going to go crazy if they go get someone like that? The defensive line, honestly, I can see it. I can see them go offensive line too. I can see them go get Tate Ratledge. I can see them go a few different directions. But that's the glory of being able to go BPA, is right now it's just about making this team better. And there's a lot of teams that have very clear holes that they have to be desperate in filling. And while this Chargers team has areas that they can improve, for sure, there is no glaring, lack of starter on this Chargers team. There's lack of maybe specific position types, right? Like you have receivers, but you're like missing like that true X of the future, right? You were missing that like running back of the future. I think they're missing defenses, but like they have starters. Like there's no clear, like that's not going to work. Like who's the right tackle? Like if they don't have that, which makes it fun. So as we kind of look forward, are there any, we talked about a bunch of dudes here. Do you have any, if Jake closed his eyes tonight, head to pillow, and they end up with one of these, give me 3 to 5 names that is on your home run. And again, it's hard because we have like 6 position groups that they can go. But like, who are the guys that are either your guys or like, yeah, that makes too much sense?
Mason Taylor is 1, Trey Harris is 2. I've given how the board has fallen, as much as I would like to see Darius Alexander on this team, it's probably not going to happen. But if TJ Sanders was there, you're cooking with some gas in terms of like literal gas in terms of what he brings to the table. Yeah, I think we actually had another slide up of possible player opportunity. Dan mentioned Omar Norton-Lott, Torrey Horton, depending on where he ends up going, CJ West out of Indiana, who I'm a huge fan of, and one of Dan's favorites in Kyle Williams. This will be an interesting day for him to see where he ends up getting drafted. But I would still say, if you were to tell me that you could pair Omarion Hampton with a combination of getting your interior defensive line and or a receiving weapon today, whether it be tight end or wide receiver, you've you've done a really good job in the first 2 days of the draft.
Yeah, to me, this team has to get, I should say has. I'm hoping that they get some type of pass catcher offensive weapon for Justin Herbert. Tight end, receiver, doesn't matter. Get him one of those. Which you can say Omarion Hampton was that too, but I think it's clear that those position groups could use work to help Justin. So for me, it's like, give me one of those and give me defensive lineman. And I'm chilling. So any one of Omar Norman Lott, CJ West, TJ Sanders, Darius Alexander, like any one of those four, I'm sprinting the card in. Okay. And then if we're looking at the receivers, tight ends, you got Ferguson, tight end out of Oregon, super high on. I know a lot of people like Fannin. I'm less high on Fannin from a specific fit, but he's there. But to me, it's Ferguson, Arroyo, or Mason Taylor. Those are the three tight ends. Receivers, honestly, they're still more than 10 that I think would be highly impactful for this Chargers team. Like we talked about Torrey Horton, we talked about Kyle Williams, Luther Burden would be sick. You talk about Trey Harris, Jaden Higgins is up there. You got Jack Besh still going. You got the guy from Stanford that, Jake, you're high on.
Alec Manor.
Like there's a bunch of dudes still that can play that X position for this Chargers team in space. Everyone loves Jalen Royals. Like he's still got a bunch of dudes here, man. Like you can go lower than that. Pat Bryant. You can go, I mean, there's a bunch. Like there's a bunch. And that's not even getting to day 3 yet. Like I think Chargers fans have it good right now. And I know it's really hard to just see some guys go. But there's a lot of receivers and pass catchers in this group this year. And this is the time where you can probably start to see them come in.
Percentage, Dan, that Joe Ortiz executes a trade today, whether that's up or down.
Yeah, I think it's high.
The Chargers remaining at 55.
Give me a line.
How about this? Because I'm battling myself because obviously I'm still the trade down proponent. I really actually thought we may get it yesterday when we saw that footage.
You and I both
thought, like, dude, they're closing the deal right now. They're going to move back. They're going to do it. No, it didn't end up happening, but we're still happy with the pick. I can't give you a line necessarily to say where they end up, but just give me like over under 75% that the Chargers trade in the second round.
I'm going to go under, but barely. It's definitely over 50.
This is either or, trade up or trading down.
Ooh, trade up for sure. I don't think I'm trading down in second round. But I can see him trading up in second or third. Because like I think at the end of this, they're going to have less than 10 picks. And this is the day to do it. This has been the sweet spot the entire time we talked about it. So, Chargers fans, you got your new bell cow. This dude is so good. And he's so well-rounded. He's a good kid. Go listen to the press conferences. The Chargers team, the staff, the front office, the scouts, everyone was unanimous in this selection. He was one of the blue chips that they did not think was going to be there. It was a pretty easy selection for them once they were not trading away from it. And again, you like a team that has conviction, that knows who they are and sticks to it. And that's what this Chargers team is. So day 2 upcoming. I'm sure everyone's driving, getting ready for their draft parties, getting ready for your sweaty palms.
Are you just talking about yourself?
Yeah, no, it's not just me. It's not just me. There's a lot of people in transit between now and 4 o'clock. So enjoy this one tonight. This is where the magic happens. This is where Joe Ortiz, a chef himself, gets to cook. And we all get to enjoy what he cooks up for us. For Jake, I'm Dan. This is Chargers Unleashed. And we'll be back with you later to talk about the day 2 haul that they get and what to expect with day 3 on the next Chargers Unleashed.